Good morning, good day, good life. Welcome, one and all. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, I'm Barrett, and I'm just in 10. So, about 10 minutes is the average time that we try to get. Sometimes a little over, sometimes a little under. Today, what we're talking about is PTSD, because I've had to read a lot of details about PTSD this last week. So, I thought, why not make it into a little podcast, a little information cast for you guys out there? Now, um, I am going under like some treatment for PTSD and stuff like that, and we talk about like a couple of things in and around PTSD, which hey, it's good, and I'll go into a little bit of that as well. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is a mental health condition that is caused by a traumatic experience. I got that from the NHS, not the traumatic experience, but the description. Um, it can be triggered by any form of trauma. So, for example, car accident, if you've gone to war, if you see violence, natural disasters, health emergencies. Um, for some, I'm guessing it's going to become a more emergent thing of like climate emergency as well. Whether you want to believe in that or not, that is completely your choice, or it's just from witnessing events as well. Age is no concern to PTSD. The only concern it does kind of have is apparently in children, it can have more profound and longer effects because probably because they don't talk about it because they're developing mentally. Probably, I don't know. I'm spitballing there if I'm honest, but overall, some of my traumas are back from being a child, so kind of can see where the scientists and the psychologists are all coming from there, all the ists there. Some people can deal with an effect of a certain trauma, and that trauma disappears and it gets processed by your brain, and and then that moves on, and then they can go on. But for other people, they develop PTSD. Um, and that's got several symptoms. So the symptoms are hyper arousal. I don't even want to know, so I skip over that quite quickly. And hypervigilance is people who are always on edge or on guard. I didn't know arousal was on edge or on guard, but it apparently is. Re-experiencing what happened, so these nightmares, upset memories intruding in the brain, and feeling disconnected from people, things, on everything along that line. Negative thoughts and moods, so it can affect your mood. Um, and so when something like guilt, ashamed, survivor's guilt, for example, if you've been again, you might from a war setting have survivor's guilt, or if you got attacked and you believe you should have been dead, um, survivor's guilt can be there probably. Um, and avoidance of reminders. So, for example, you might not walk down the same street if you was attacked, for example, because it's got a reminder. You might not like the smell of something because it reminds you of the event that happened. You avoid those places that's got those things, and it's always very, very important to like understand the ins and outs of avoidance as well. So there's quite a bit on avoidance today. The background of PTSD. I've seen two years for this. 1970s I read in one place and 1980 in the other. But PTSD was first identified in 1980 by the American Psychiatric Association, which added PTSD into the third edition of its Diagnostics and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. It was considered controversial at the time as well, and that's a bit of a weird one. But why would it be classed as? But looking back at it now, it seems quite weird. But obviously, mental health and things along those lines, it's probably when I was putting a lot of this stuff in, it was considered controversial. However, it filled a large gap in psychiatric theory, which was good as it continued. Heavily connected to this was Michael R. Timble. And there is no one size fits all mental wellness and things like that. There's never a one size fits all. It looks different in each and every single person. It's always very, very important to remember that. And so, always, when possible, seek advice from a professional when you are looking at these issues. That takes us to CBT as a whole. And how that touches on PTSD. I think it's really important because I'm going through CBT. CBT is an extremely popular evidence-based psychological therapy that looks at breaking the cycle of so you've got the cycle of anxiety, you've got a cycle of panic, and you've also got the cycle of PTSD, basically. And psychologists Anki and David Clark saw PTSD as a puzzle. I guess the world's a puzzle, or is it a stage? It can be absolutely either of the ones, depending on which way you want to look at things. But they asked themselves, why should people with PTSD feel a current sense of threat? And that is always an interesting thing. Why do we feel a current sense of threat? And they looked a little bit deeper into this. Um, they saw three different things: unprocessed memories. So, memories that your brain hasn't processed. Belief about trauma and coping strategies, including avoidance. So, the belief about the trauma, so how you believe this trauma was. I mean, thinking back at sort of my traumas, like the attack that I had when I was in Mablethorpe, I I still believe I should be dead from that. I honestly do. I honestly believe when I think back at that event, I was very lucky to survive. On top of that, the police did an absolute terrible job. So I connect a little bit the police's terrible job connecting all the dots up, and I would never trust the police ever again, if I'm honest. There are things that keep PTSD going, and I think we'll go into that now. We don't want to touch on that for too long. I might go into a whole episode on it actually. Psychologists believe the memories of trauma is stored in a different part of your brain. So your normal non-traumatic memories, they are stored in one part of your brain, and that's absolutely fine. You can pick and choose when you use those when you get those memories, but this unprocessed area of your brain, they claim that it has a more of a vivid, passionate, probably the wrong word, but it can pop into your mind at a moment's notice, um, and this is what we then have to deal with, and how it affects our mood and everything, because it can just get there straight away, you know? It can be as bad when you have the vivid images, and I know this personally. It feels like I'm there again, and it's very, very difficult for me. And then it heightens my anxiety, and it does so much more. It's like the first domino getting knocked over very, very often. And that's kind of difficult for me, at least. The act of avoidance in itself can keep these unprocessed memories remaining to be unprocessed. And if you do use avoidance, which we will finish on actually, um, then you'll never change the thought process. And that's what CBT tries to do. Instead of thinking, I am in danger now, CBT tries to convince your brain that when you're thinking about it, it's not I am in danger now, it is the attack happened in my past. However, I am now safe. I am alive. So it's finding a way to flip that switch in your head, and it is really difficult to do. But as I say, that's where avoidance comes in. This is where we finish because I'm running out of time. I've just look over at the side, and this is where avoidance comes in. Avoidance is very, very common, and it's something which we all do. We all avoid something as a general rule. However, with PTSD, it is not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, the worst thing in the world has many, many other things that can happen, but and it doesn't let you process the memories, but it can still have a good effect. It can be helpful in other words. That's what it says on psychological tools, at least. As mentioned before, you can avoid your memories by anything that reminds you. So going down a street, smelling something in particular, and anything that reminds you of the trauma. You can use alcohol and substances. Again, that is something which isn't great to do. However, in the short term, it may be a good thing for you to get you through those moments. And not final one of avoidance is not discussing what has happened, what is happening, and so on and so forth. as I said, the psychological tools actually goes in to say it can be a great short term for individuals, but in the long term, it will never actually help you. You've got to face your issues that you process. Anyway, guys, I'm out of time. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. I hope you have a fantastic day and enjoy whatever you have planned. And I'll see you all very soon.